Chapter 1: The First Glance. I never believed in fate. Not really. Life always seemed like a series of random events, stitched together by chance and circumstance. But everything changed the moment I saw him. It was a warm spring afternoon, the kind when the air feels heavy with promises yet to be fulfilled. I was late, as usual, rushing across the crowded square with my bag slapping against my side and my mind lost in 100 worries. Then I saw him. He stood by the fountain, his back against the old stone, scrolling through his phone with a slight frown, as if the whole world had to wait for him to finish whatever he was doing. He wasn't like anyone I had ever seen before. Tall, relaxed, effortlessly drawing attention without even trying. His dark hair curled slightly at the edges, and there was a quiet strength about him that pulled at something deep inside me. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I must have stared for too long, because when he looked up, our eyes locked. A spark, real, undeniable, flickered between us. I quickly looked away, heart hammering, cheeks burning. How ridiculous, I thought. He probably didn't even notice me. But then I stole another glance, and he was still looking. The days that followed were a blur of hope and confusion. I found myself passing by the fountain more often, pretending to have errands that never existed. Sometimes he was there, sometimes not. And when he was, my heart would leap against my ribs in a way that felt almost painful. I didn't know his name. I didn't know anything about him, but somehow I felt like I had known him forever. It wasn't long before I realized I wasn't the only one who had noticed him. There were others, prettier girls, braver girls who smiled at him, who laughed a little louder when he was near. Girls who had no hesitation walking right up to him and starting a conversation. I wasn't like them. I was shy, quiet, always afraid of taking up too much space. Yet every time I saw him laugh at another girl's joke, something twisted inside me. I hated that feeling, that raw, aching jealousy. But it was real, and it was strong. I knew, deep down, that if I wanted a chance, I would have to fight for it. The thought terrified me, but the thought of letting him slip away terrified me even more. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with streaks of orange and pink, I made a decision. I would talk to him. Somehow. No more hiding in the crowd. No more wishing from afar. My hands trembled as I approached the fountain. He was there, as if waiting, the golden light catching in his hair, making him look almost unreal. For a moment I froze, every instinct telling me to turn and run. But then he looked up and smiled. A slow, warm smile that made the world tilt slightly on its axis. And I smiled back. That was the beginning. I didn't know it then, but that single moment would change everything. It would take more courage than I thought I had. It would take heartbreak and patience and battles I wasn't sure I could win. But standing there with his eyes locked on mine, I realized something. Sometimes fate gives you a chance, but it's up to you to fight for your destiny. Chapter 2: The Battle Begins. It didn't take long for reality to catch up with the fantasy I had built in my head. Her name was Sophia. The first time I saw her with him, my heart dropped. She was beautiful in a way that seemed effortless, tall, with sleek hair that caught the sunlight, and a laugh that sounded like music. She wasn't afraid like I was. She wasn't hesitating. She walked straight up to him one afternoon at the fountain, her confidence wrapping around her like an invisible crown. And he smiled at her. A real smile. The kind that made me want to cry. I watched from a distance, pretending to be busy with my phone, but every glance they shared felt like a blow. I hated how easily they talked, how comfortable they seemed together. I hated that I cared so much. For a few days, I disappeared. I couldn't bear to see them together. I told myself it was hopeless, that fate had made a mistake, that he wasn't meant for me after all. It hurt more than I ever thought it could. But then, one night, lying awake in my small room, staring at the ceiling, I realized something. Giving up wouldn't make the pain go away. Watching him with someone else would still hurt, whether I tried or not. If I was going to be broken either way, I might as well break while fighting for him. I wasn't Sophia. I couldn't compete with her beauty or her easy laughter. But I had something else. Something that felt fiercer and deeper than anything I had ever known. I had love. Real, terrifying, soul-deep love. And I wasn't ready to let it slip through my fingers. The next morning, I chose my favorite dress. Nothing fancy, just something that made me feel like myself. I pulled my hair back the way he had once glanced at and smiled. I took a deep breath and went back to the fountain. He was there, and so was Sophia. She was laughing at something he had said, tossing her hair over her shoulder like it was all so easy. But when he caught sight of me, something shifted in his expression. Just a flicker, a small, almost imperceptible change, but I saw it. I smiled. Not at her, not at him, for myself. I walked past them, my heart racing, every step screaming for me to turn around, to hide, to disappear. But I didn't. I sat on a bench nearby, pulled out a book I couldn't focus on, and waited. It wasn't long before I felt someone approach. "Hey," a voice said, low and familiar. I looked up. It was him. Sophia watched from a distance, her arms crossed, her mouth set in a tight line. I could almost hear her thoughts. Who is she? Why her? I didn't have an answer. I only knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her, or anyone, steal what could be the love of my life. He sat next to me, and we talked. About nothing, about everything, about books and music and favorite places in the city. Every word felt like stitching a wound that had been bleeding for too long. He smiled differently when he talked to me. Softer, more real. Maybe, just maybe, fate was on my side, after all. But Sophia wasn't going to give up easily, and neither was I. This was just the beginning of the battle for his heart, and I was ready to fight. Chapter 3: Shadows of Doubt. I should have known it wouldn't be easy. The next days felt like walking a tightrope. Every moment I spent with him was light and laughter, but every time I turned my back, I felt Sophia's gaze burning into me. She wasn't subtle. Not anymore. One afternoon, when he and I were sitting by the fountain sharing coffee, Sophia appeared, her smile sweet but her eyes sharp. "Hey," she said, flipping her hair back. "Mind if I steal him for a second?" I froze. He hesitated, glancing at me, but then stood up politely. I watched them step a few feet away, my heart thudding painfully. They spoke in low voices. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the way she leaned in, touching his arm, her face full of false concern. His brow furrowed slightly, his posture stiffened, and when he finally came back to me, something was different. Something was wrong. He smiled, but it was strained. I tried to brush it off, pretending not to notice, but inside, panic bloomed like a dark flower. What had she told him? What lies had she planted between us? That evening, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake replaying every second, every look, every small change. Doubt gnawed at me. Maybe I was wrong about him. Maybe he wasn't feeling the same connection I felt. Maybe Sophia was right for him after all. Polished, confident, safe. But then I remembered his eyes. The way he looked at me when he thought no one else was watching. And I knew. Whatever Sophia had said, whatever shadows she tried to cast between us, they weren't real. But doubt has a way of poisoning even the strongest hearts. The next time we met, it wasn't the same. He was distant, distracted. Our conversations felt forced, strained. I smiled and laughed too brightly, trying to cover the cracks, but inside I was breaking. One night, after a particularly cold meeting where he barely said goodbye, I sat alone on the fountain's edge, blinking back tears. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe love wasn't enough. I almost left, but then, footsteps. I looked up. It was him. He stood there, hands shoved into his pockets, looking uncertain, vulnerable in a way I had never seen before. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice rough. "For what?" My voice was a whisper. He hesitated. "For being stupid." The words hung between us, fragile and trembling. He sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders touched. "Sophia said things," he admitted quietly. "Things about you. Lies. I didn't want to believe them, but I guess I got scared." I swallowed hard, willing myself not to cry. "You don't have to explain," I said, though my heart was screaming for him to fight for me, to choose me. But he did. He took my hand. A simple touch, but it carried 1,000 promises. "I don't care what she says," he murmured. "I trust what I feel." And just like that, the shadows began to lift. It wasn't a victory. Not yet, but it was a beginning. A real beginning. And this time I wasn't going to let anything or anyone tear us apart. Chapter 4: The Moment of Truth. The days that followed were fragile, delicate like glass. We spent time together, more than ever before, but always under the watchful gaze of the world around us. Sophia didn't disappear. If anything, she fought harder. Casual run-ins, secret smiles, whispered rumors. It was exhausting, but I refused to give up. not after how far we had come. Still, the doubt crept in sometimes, late at night when I was alone with my thoughts. What if she succeeded? What if he realized he wanted something easier, simpler, less complicated than me? One evening, everything came crashing down. We were supposed to meet at our usual place by the fountain. I waited, heart beating in nervous excitement, scanning every face in the crowd. Minutes turned into an hour. The sky darkened. My heart sank. Maybe I was wrong after all. Maybe he had chosen her. Crushing disappointment closed around me as I stood to leave, but then I heard my name. I turned. He was running toward me, out of breath, eyes wild. "I'm sorry," he gasped. She told me you left, that you didn't want to see me anymore. I almost believed her. I was stupid again. But then I realized." He stopped, catching his breath, his voice thick with emotion. "I realized that none of it made sense. Because when I think about who I trust, who makes me feel alive, it's you." I stared at him, barely daring to believe it. "You," he repeated, stepping closer, his hands reaching for mine. "Always you." The world around us faded away. I could feel my heart in every inch of my body, pounding, aching, hoping. But why? I whispered, the doubt still lingering like a ghost. He smiled, not the polite, careful smile he gave everyone else, but the real one, the one he saved just for me. "Because you saw me," he said softly, "before anyone else did, before I even knew who I was trying to be. You believed in me. You fought for me. You didn't have to, but you did." Tears welled up in my eyes, but this time they were tears of something fierce and beautiful. Love. He leaned in slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. I didn't. Our lips met, and it wasn't fireworks. It wasn't some dramatic explosion. It was something better. It was quiet, certain, like the final piece of a puzzle sliding perfectly into place. It was home. When we finally pulled apart, he pressed his forehead against mine, smiling in a way that made the whole world brighter. "I'm yours," he whispered. And I knew, with every heartbeat, with every breath, with every part of me, he was mine too. I had found my destiny, and I had fought for it. And in the end, it was worth every single moment.